Swamiji had a nice hobby. He reared half a dozen types of animals. His most favorite was a dog. He gave the name to the dog Bagha. What is Bagha? From Bagh, tiger. He used to call it tiger, Bagha. He had a couple of goats. He used to play around with these things all the time. And the goats used to eat up the new plants which are being grown by Brahmananda. And there was always an argument between Brahmananda and Swamiji. Brahmananda would say, keep your goats away. Swamiji said, they are also Brahman. But then Brahmananda became wise. He would plant a seed and then build a fence around so that the goats would not touch them. He showed his compassion to animals also. So we start with the prayer. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya.
Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya.
Vivekananda Suraye.
Vivekananda Suraye.
Satchit Sukha Swarupaya.
Satchit Sukha Swarupaya.
Swamine Tapaharine.
Swamine Tapaharine.
Swamiji was once again in Paris. This was probably his third visit. This time he was in the company of most of his famous American disciples, including Emma Calvé, the Leggett family, and Sarah Bull and others. The Leggett family had engaged a palatial building for the period, and the whole group stayed there. It was pretty close to the grounds of the Paris exposition and also the conference hall where the inter-religious conference was being held. This gives you an idea of the spread of this exposition. You can see the famous Eiffel Tower, and the two buildings in front of the Eiffel Tower were constructed at that time. Today they are parts of the Egyptian Museum, and right in front is a beautiful garden, Jardin des Tuileries, which takes you straight to the famous museum, the world famous museum of Paris. The whole exposition was behind the Eiffel Tower. You notice in the distance the Ferris wheel, which you had seen in Chicago also. But there is something else in this picture. Mind you, it was the year 1900, the onset of the next millennium. And to indicate shape of things to come, you see two factory chimneys belching out smoke. Pollution problems. In spite of all that, Paris is even today the most beautiful city in the whole world, according to me and according to a large number of people, but not according to those who live in big cities in Europe. In one YIC batch, I made this comment. I consider Paris the most beautiful city. One young man objected, no sir, Amsterdam is the most beautiful city. Another lady said, no, I don't agree. Vienna is the most beautiful city. Swamiji gave 2 lectures on Advait Vedanta in French. He had polished his French before coming here by talking French to Emma Calvé. Emma Calvé's mother tongue was French. At that time, he renewed his acquaintance with a very famous personality, Sarah Bernhardt, whom he had met earlier in New York. Sarah Bernhardt was to theatre what Emma Calvé was to opera music. Just as Emma Calvé was the most famous opera singer of Western world, Sarah Bernhardt was the most famous actress. In New York, Swamiji had seen one of her latest dramas called Israel, based upon the life of Amrapali. Have you heard of the story of Amrapali? She lived at the time of the Buddha. She was so beautiful a woman that the princess of Vaishali fought with one another to marry her. Then all of them decided, why should we be selfish? Why not Amrapali be the common property of everybody? They literally pushed her into prostitution. She became rich overnight, built a huge palace in the city and lived there with great comfort, but she was not happy. One day she heard somebody at the door saying, Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. She came out, it was Tathagata, Buddha. Instantly she fell in love with Buddha. She told him, why are you wandering around like a monk? You are a young fellow. Why don't you come and live with me? I'll make you so happy. Buddha said, Amrapali, you don't need me now. When you need me, I'll come by myself. And went away. Life went on like this for a few more years until Amrapali contacted leprosy. Once she had leprosy, you know what happens to people? Boils on their faces, on their bodies, she became ugly. All the princes of Vaishali threw her out of their town. She was given a small cottage in the outskirts where she had to live now all alone in misery. And one day she heard the sound, Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. Buddha was standing in front of her cottage. She cried. Buddha said, Amrapali, you need me now. That's why I have come. She asked Buddha, what should I do now? Take shelter under Dhamma, Sangha and Buddha. He gave her that Mahamantra. Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. And she became a Buddhist nun and went away with Buddha. She played the role of Amrapali. The French version was Israel, Izeyl. It was a roaring success. The same play was again shown in Paris as part of the exposition. Swamiji was there again in that. After the play was over, when the whole group of Swamiji went to a nearby restaurant for dinner, Sarah joined them. I would like to spend some time with you. So Sarah Bull, the other Sarah, says, there I was sitting at a table for 4 with Swami Vivekananda, then Sarah Bernhardt and Emma Calvé. It suddenly occurred to me, in which company am I sitting? The genius of philosophy, Vedanta, the genius of the theatre, and the genius of opera music. She said, I felt so small. Sarah was very happy to see Swamiji. She wanted him to stay for a little longer in Paris, but Swamiji said, no, I have to go back home. So one day he told Emma Calvé, Emma, I think it is time we started making our way towards the south. Meanwhile, they had a chance to go to the north of France to a place called Brittany. And in Brittany, there is a small island, Mont Saint-Michel, Mount of Saint Michael. It is divided, separated from the mainland by a causeway. Causeway is an ordinary road. But the only problem was, twice in a day when there was a tide, the road would be submerged in water. When the tide ebbed, the road was exposed, then you could go there. And there was a fort, inside the fort a famous church, And below the church, there was a prison house. So all of them went there. There was a guide. He took them round. All of them went into the cellar, which was a prison house. And Swamiji was shown iron rings fixed to the walls, to which the prisoners were attached, hung. And the guide wanted to impress Swamiji and others with the terrible things. Then he asked Swamiji, Swamiji, what is your opinion about this? Swamiji said, what a wonderful place for meditation. Absolutely quiet and no noise. So Sarah Bull says, to each his own. To that guide, it was a horrible place of confinement. To Swamiji, a wonderful place for meditation. From there they came back to Paris. Now Emma Calvé went to the local office of the French railways and purchased first-class tickets for all of them by this very famous train, Orient Express. Have you heard of this? We in India know about Orient Express only through a murder story of Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot's story, Murder on the Orient Express. But Orient Express is running even today. And this is the pamphlet which you find kept on the seats. You know, this is a very interesting habit of European railways. When you enter a compartment, on your seat, you find a pamphlet. The pamphlet gives you the map and the route, the path along which you go, and at every station where the train stops, the connecting trains to other stations. And this is what was located by Marie-Louise Burke and included in her famous book, Swami Vivekananda in the West, New Discoveries. As you can see from the pamphlet, the train used to start from London, come to Paris, and go to Constantinople, your place. You are from Turkey?
Yes,
Constantinople. Today it is called Istanbul. But how did it cross the English Channel? It did not cross the English Channel. It would leave London, come to Dover. And in Dover, all the passengers would disembark with their baggage. They would get into a boat waiting for them and cross the channel on water and come to Calais in France. They would get off in Calais, and in Calais railway station, there would be an identical train waiting for them with the same seat numbers. So they would get into that, and now the travel was non-stop up to Constantinople. So Emma Calvé purchased tickets there. All of them got into the train in Paris. Advantage in the first class ticket was you could get off anywhere and next day or the day after that catch the next train which was coming there. Breaking the journey was very comfortable. So Swamiji decided to halt in Vienna, the capital of Austria. Vienna is also, like Paris, an absolutely beautiful city, full of music. You know, Vienna is the place in Europe which has been considered the center of Western classical music. Some of the greatest names of composers, they lived there, and all of them are buried in the local churchyard. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Ludwig van Beethoven, Franz Schubert, and most famous of all, the Strauss family, who gave waltz a respectable position in Western classical music. Swamiji was a lover of Western classical music. I told you already, he knew how to play the piano also. So he thoroughly enjoyed his stay in Vienna. I have been there once. I went there for a totally different purpose, but I enjoyed my stay because that was the place where I could see footprints of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, my favorite composer. Fantastic place. Swamiji thoroughly enjoyed it. They came back to the train after 2 days, continued the journey until they came to Rome. Swamiji said he wants to see the Vatican. All of them got off. They went to see Rome, the Vatican. Everybody was impressed except Swamiji. Swamiji's comment was, all this pomp and glory in the name of one who did not know where to lay his head. You know what you have today as Christianity is not Christianity at all. Swamiji used to call it Paulianity. It was hijacked by Paul, who was born Saul, S-A-U-L. He belonged to Tarsus near Damascus in Syria. He was a Jew, a hater of Christians. He would have probably persecuted them. But then he found a wonderful opportunity because he was a politician. There was a vacuum after Jesus was nailed to the cross. Some people say he died there. Some other people say he escaped from the cross and came away to Damascus. And from Damascus, where did he go? He is supposed to have come down to Srinagar, Kashmir. You go to Kashmir, in Srinagar, there is a street, Isa Masih Ka Rasta, the road of Isa Masih, Isa the Prophet. Muslim family, they are in charge of a grave. They say that is where Jesus is buried. And you doubt that, they become very angry with you. What do you know? Our family has been looking after the grave for almost 2,000 years, ever since Jesus came and died here at the age of 70. Difficult to understand what really happened with Jesus the Christ. But one thing was certain, I told you already, he had been highly influenced by Buddhism. That is the reason why his preachings are very close to the preachings of the Buddha. And Swamiji's comment was, church became actually corrupted after 300 AD, when Constantine the emperor became a Christian and took over the Christian empire. From that time, things went from bad to worse. Middle Ages, what were the Middle Ages notorious for? Spanish Inquisition. Anyone who did not agree with Aristotle was burnt at stake. How many scientists were burnt at stake? It is a very gory history. And the current Pope, even today, is apologizing for all those days. Have you heard of a novel and a movie, Angels and Demons?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Dan Brown. Have you seen the movie?
Yes.
You should. It's a very interesting story. It is the story of how the scientists of the 20th century decide to take revenge on the Roman Catholic Church for all that they did to scientists in the Middle Ages. Fiction, total fiction, but entertaining. That man is there, Tom Hanks is there as the main actor, but gripping drama. The novel is based upon these incidents which happened in the Middle Ages. I teach to our students a course called Science and Consciousness, when I have to trace the history of science, and when I come to the early days of modern science, I have to tell all these stories. There was even the case of a pope who had a concubine. He had a son, illegitimate son by her, and he fought very hard to see that after him, the illegitimate son becomes the pope. The whole Roman Catholic Church was corrupted. Why do you think Martin Luther rebelled against it? Martin Luther had been seeing all that. He was a clergyman in Roman Catholic Church. He rebelled against it. He protested. That is why his movement came to be known as Protestantism, protest movement. And even today in many countries, there is a difference of opinion between Protestants and Roman Catholics. Oh, Swamiji had a lot to say about all these things. But he says, unless and until we come to know what were the true teachings of Jesus the Christ, we will not be able to appreciate his greatness. 20th century has seen a lot of improvement. I have a large number of books I purchased in US and brought with me from Barnes and Noble, dealing with research which has gone into the story of Jesus and early history of the Roman Catholic Church. It is revealing, very much revealing how much information has now become available. Worth reading, worth studying. We should be aware of all these things. So this was Rome. And incidentally, Italy till recently was a Roman Catholic country with Roman Catholic religion as its state religion. Now they have become secular. They say we don't want any religion. We have seen enough havoc done by religion. So now they are very secular. From there, they came to Athens, but did not stop in Athens. Though Swamiji wanted to do that, he was in a hurry to reach the destination, Istanbul, Constantinople. They reached Constantinople and disembarked. When Swamiji went through the customs and immigration, the immigration authorities confiscated the 2 books he had with him, a copy of the Bhagavad Gita and Imitation of Christ. Told him, when you are leaving Istanbul, you can collect these books back. Emma Calvi accommodated the whole group in a big hotel, and then they were able to see a lot of Istanbul, of the town itself. And Turkey has been always known in those days as the sick man of Europe, because Turkey was never sure whether it is a part of Asia or a part of Europe. It straddles both. Connecting the two is the bridge of Bosphorus. I have seen the Bosphorus bridge from the air. I was flying by Japan Airlines. Those were the days when there was no terrorism. I sent my card to the pilot. Can I come and sit with you for some time? He said, I'll call you when we come to Turkey. And then midnight I got a message from the air hostess. I went and sat with the captain on a jump seat. He said, Professor, look down. I looked down. What a fantastic sight. Midnight. The bridge of Bosphorus with all the lights. And the pilot told me, we are now entering Asia. We are leaving behind Europe. We are entering Asia. Swamiji visited that. He has written all about these things in a small book, Memoirs of My European Travel. It was originally written in Bengali, now translated to English. From there, the party decided to go to Athens. Swamiji was interested in Athens. Why? Athens was the center of the early Greek philosophy. People like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and several others lived in Athens. Now Athens, ancient Athens, is only a ruin. They went around seeing the ruins and then took a boat there and came down to Egypt, Alexandria. From Alexandria, along the Nile, they came to the capital, Cairo. They stayed in the capital. They were not very familiar with this city. So one evening, Emma Calvi and Sarah Bull decided to take Swamiji for a walk. I have told you this story. By mistake, they strayed into the red light district, where they saw half-clad girls standing in the doorways, making lewd gestures. Then I told you how he went to a home where there were 2 girls standing, looking at them with tears in his eyes. He said, oh dear, Divine Mother, you are here in this form also. And what did the girls do? They knelt down, kissed the hem of his dress, and said in Spanish, Hombre de Dios, and ran inside. That incident happened around that time. Then he told the American disciples about the Tawaif in the court of Raja of Khetri. Prabhu Moreavaguna, Chittanadar. One day when they were all in Cairo, Swamiji called Emma Calvi and told her, Emma, something untoward has happened. Date was 28th October 1900. Something untoward has happened in India. I have to rush back. Can you help me? Without batting an eyelid, she went to portside, got hold of a shipping agent, found out the earliest ship leaving from portside to Bombay and purchased a first-class berth ticket for Swamiji. The ship was supposed to leave about a week later. So in the first week of November 1900, Swamiji left for India all alone. The others said they will follow later. He gave part of his baggage to the others. He took only a couple of handbags. The ship finally reached Bombay around the end of December or beginning of January. He got down from the ship, made his way to the railway station, caught a train to go to Kolkata. The journey from Bombay to Kolkata in those days used to take 4 days. After 4 days, Swamiji came to Howrah station. It was late in the evening. He hired a horse carriage. This time he had not told anybody that he is coming back. He hired a horse carriage, came to Belur Mutt. By that time, the Mutt had shifted from Baranagar to Alam Bazar to Neelambur Mukherjee's garden house, and even before Swamiji left for the west for the second time, they had already started shifting to the Belur Mutt grounds. Now a couple of buildings were ready. It was comfortable to live there. Swamiji had been getting reports of all these things, so he knew where to go. He came there. It was late in the night, 9:30. The gates were closed and locked, main gate. He rattled the gate. Nobody heard him. He threw the bags over the gate, iron gate, climbed up, jumped on the other side and started walking. A watchman from a distance saw that. He saw that a man in a western dress had climbed over the gate and jumped and was coming. Immediately he ran to the dining hall and told Swami Brahmananda, Maharaj, a police inspector has come. Why did the watchman mistake Swamiji for a police inspector? The revolution had already started in Bengal against Britishers. And a lot of young people, in order to see that they are not caught by the police, used to come to Belur Mutt and take refuge. It was a very difficult job for Brahmananda to filter them out. That is why the police were raiding that mutt regularly. So everybody thought, late in the night, 9:30, so a police inspector has come. So they were all anxious. When Swamiji came to the light, there was an exclamation of joy. Everybody started shouting, Narayan has come back, Swamiji has come back. Lot of shaking of hands, slapping the back. Before anybody could ask him anything, Swamiji asked Brahmananda one question. Raja, I am famished. What is there for dinner? Raja said, Brahmananda, khichdi. Swamiji was immensely pleased. That was his favorite. So Swamiji ate khichdi, then asked Raja, Raja, when I was in Cairo, I had a premonition that something untoward had happened in India. What was it? When was this? Raja asked him. 28th October 1900. Oh, that was the day on which Captain Saviour in Mayavati Hills passed away. Look at the telepathy. When Captain Saviour passed away in Mayavati, Swamiji felt it in Cairo. That was the closeness he had with his disciples. So after a few days, he arranged a party of about 10 people, and with their help, he made a long, arduous journey of 4 days to come to Mayavati Hills. And this is the place to which he came, Advait Ashrama. This was the ashrama set up by Captain and Mrs. Saviour. Already there were a couple of sannyasis, one or two brahmacharis working there with Captain Saviour. So they received Swamiji and explained to him what had happened. It was a sudden heart attack and Captain Saviour was buried outside. He asked Mrs. Saviour, what do you want to do? You want to stay here or you want to go back to England? She said, my husband is buried here. I would rather prefer to stay with him. But later when she became very old, fragile, frail, her relatives came from England and took her away. What a fantastic sacrifice the husband and wife did to establish Advait Ashram. Very recently a book has appeared in the Ramakrishna Mutt circles, published by Advait Ashram, The Charm of the Mayavati Ashrama. It tells you the story of how the whole thing came into existence. Swamiji spent 1 month there. And incidentally, some of the best disciples of Swamiji who took sannyas under him worked in this particular ashram. Incidentally, Swamiji in India gave sannyas to 13 people. But in the United States, he had given sannyas to 3 people. So his total number of disciples comes to 16. So after spending about a month, Swamiji decided to come back to Kolkata. Now he had to take care of the construction work of Belur Mutt. This is not the photograph at that time, but a little later of one of the stages of the construction of Belur Mutt. But when Swamiji came there were only 2 buildings. One was this building. Upstairs was the shrine for Sri Ramakrishna. Downstairs was the dining hall plus the rooms for monks and brahmacharis. To the right of this building, there was another 2-storied structure. You can see it better now. The ground floor was again room for people to stay, sannyasis and brahmacharis. Upstairs there was a nice room. That was Swami Vivekananda's room for the last 1.5 years of his life. This is the way the room looks inside. It was like this at that time also. What are the things you notice? You notice 2 cots. Like his Guru Swamiji had 2 cots. There was one cot on which he used to sleep and you find the mosquito net there. The other place where he used to sit and talk to people. There was a desk and a chair. And on the stand by the side is a beautiful statue of the Buddha. On the wall, a photograph of Sri Ramakrishna, and this side, later, a photograph of Shada Devi was kept there. Not when she was alive, after her Mahasamadhi. This was the room from where he did the entire planning operations. The first thing he had to take care of was the construction. He had to engage laborers. Some laborers had been engaged, they had done the preliminary work, but Swamiji wanted a large number. He engaged 40 laborers of Biharis who had settled down in Kolkata, belonging to a tribe known as santhals. Have you heard of them? In those days, 18th century, Bihar was the most fertile land in the whole of India. She used to receive regularly waters of the river Ganga. If you go to Patna, there is a famous bridge. I think, if I remember right, it is called Indira Gandhi Bridge or something like that. 5 kilometers long. Ganga Bridge. When you drive over that, sometimes you notice the river is so thin right in the center. You start wondering why a bridge of 5 kilometers. When we were going, I asked our driver Rajkumar, why such a long bridge? Saab, you come in the rainy season, you come in the flood season. The Mai Ganga, 5 kilometers wide. She looks like an ocean. And whenever the river used to ebb, the waters would recede, the river would leave behind alluvial soil brought from the Himalayas. No need for any manure, nothing. You throw the seeds, the plants would come up, and they were growing a lot of wheat and rice. Bihar was at that time the granary of India. But then something happened in Europe, the Industrial Revolution. One of the things which happened in Industrial Revolution was establishment of textile mills making cotton. You know, when cotton is made first from the cotton seeds, or rather the fluffy cotton, the color of the cloth is buff. It is not white. It has to be bleached. The only agent available at that time for bleaching was indigo plant. Leaves of the indigo, the branches of indigo. Indigo plantation had one problem. You plant indigo once in a soil, the soil is destroyed forever. It sucks away all the nitrogen. England could not afford to grow indigo. After all, it's a small country like a handkerchief compared to a huge country like India. So the eyes of the East India Company fell upon Bihar. Very fertile land, so indigo can be grown easily. So they confiscated the land from the santhals. And the santhals were given a meager compensation. How long would that meager compensation last? In no time, santhals became a very poor community. They started migrating out. One group went to Kolkata, another group went to the other side of the country, to Bombay. The santhals who came to Kolkata settled down there as what? Servants, working at homes, construction workers. Swamiji knew their story. He engaged 40 of them for construction work. Incidentally, there is something interesting about the Santhal community. A very famous Bengali writer wrote a novel about the struggle of the Santhals against East India Company. They did not give way easily, they protested. And in this story, there are two sannyasis who are supposed to have helped them. It was the Santhal rebellion. Later, of course, another very famous personality led a fight against the Britishers in Bihar, a local man. It came to be known as Indigo Satyagraha. Do you know who it was? The first president of India, Babu Rajendra Prasad. He led that fight. But earlier, in this novel, two sannyasis are supposed to have helped the Santhals in the rebellion. The rebellion was crushed by the East India Company. However, that novel gave us a song, very famous song, which is our second national anthem. What is that song? Vande Mataram. It is from that novel, Vande Mataram. Now Swamiji engaged 40 Santhals. One day he announced to the Santhals, tomorrow I am going to cook lunch for all of you, serve you myself. They protested. Swamiji, why should you do that? He said, why not? So next morning, with the help of a couple of brahmacharis, he prepared lunch for them. They were all made to sit in a line. Swamiji and the brahmacharis served them, and afterwards Swamiji called all the sannyasis and brahmacharis there and told them, see these people, they are Daridra Narayana, the divine in the form of poor people. This word Daridra Narayana was later taken over by Mahatma Gandhi, who used it regularly in his speeches. The duty of everyone is to serve the Daridra Narayana of our country, but it was first used by Swami Vivekananda. That shows his warm heart, that also shows his compassion and sympathy for these people. Swamiji had a nice hobby. He reared half a dozen types of animals. His most favorite was a dog. He gave the name to the dog Bagha. What is Bagha? From Bagh, tiger. He used to call it tiger, Bagha. He had a couple of goats. He used to play around with these things all the time. And the goats used to eat up the new plants which are being grown by Brahmananda. And there was always an argument between Brahmananda and Swamiji. Brahmananda would say, keep your goats away. Swamiji said, they are also Brahman. But then Brahmananda became wise. He would plant a seed and then build a fence around so that the goats would not touch them. He showed his compassion to animals also. 2 or 3 more incidents happened. This I will narrate tomorrow, because there must be something for me to talk about tomorrow. Just to indicate to you the character of Swamiji. I think one incident I will mention now that we have time, 10 minutes. One day, Josephine MacLeod came from Japan in the company of 2 Buddhist Japanese monks. They came to meet Swamiji. They had actually come to India to go to Bodhgaya. The problem was Vishnugaya and Bodhgaya were both under the custody of the Mahant, chief priest of Vishnugaya. And Bodhgaya was not being maintained properly. For the Buddhists all over the world, it is a big shrine. So the Japanese came with a plea that they should be given the responsibility for maintaining Bodhgaya. How to convince the Mahant? Swamiji earlier had gone to Bodhgaya when Sri Ramakrishna was in Kashipur Garden House. He was sick. This time again with Josephine and the 2 Japanese monks, he went to Bodhgaya. He tried to convince the Mahant. The Mahant was very stubborn. So it was not much of a success. They had to come back empty-handed to Kolkata. But 26 January 1950, India became a republic. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister. Humayun Kabir became the first Minister for Education. Jawaharlal Nehru was aware of this problem in Patna. So he coolly handed over both the temples, Vishnugaya, Bodhgaya, to the Education Ministry in Delhi. Humayun Kabir went to Patna, appointed an officer and told all the people there, this officer will be in charge of both Bodhgaya and Vishnugaya. Nobody could object. Even today it is a part of the MHRD, Ministry of Human Resource Development. And then, after some time, Humayun Kabir did something else. He invited people from the countries where Buddhism is the state religion to come to Patna and to establish guest houses. Now if you go to Gaya, near Bodhgaya, you find guest houses of Thailand, South Korea, then Sri Lanka, couple of other countries which follow Buddhism. You can go and stay anywhere there, irrespective of your nationality. And we have our own guest house of the for the Hindus. Has anyone been to Bodhgaya? You should. It is worth visiting. You know, it is a very historic place. The place where Buddha was born, the place where he attained enlightenment, and the place where he entered Mahaparinirvana. Today people doubt a lot about Siddhartha being born in the Lumbini forest. Most of them say that he must have been born in Bodhgaya itself. The local people believe so. But it is a fact, below the Bodhi tree there, he had his enlightenment. And that is where he entered Mahaparinirvana. Below the Bodhi tree, there is a nice casket made of glass. Inside there is a small image of Buddha made of diamonds. Not covered with diamonds. It is made of diamonds. Diamond pieces have been stuck together to give the shape of the Buddha. Priceless, not from the point of view of money alone, but that is the spot where he is supposed to have attained this Bodhi, Bodha. The tree is not the same as in those days. The original tree partly was shifted to Sri Lanka. That can be found in Kandy, in Sri Lanka. But this is a clone of that. A clone which has been grown from that. If you go to Bodhgaya, you don't feel like coming away. So clean, so neat. And the Buddhist monks there are so polite. So Swamiji had an opportunity this way to go and see Bodhgaya, Vishnugaya once again. So we stop here. We close with the prayer. Harihi Om Tat Sat.
Harihi Om Tat Sat.
Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.